Perfect. Well, it just turned to 3 o'clock, so we can kind of get the show on the road here a little bit. But we are here to present our webinar series that we like to call How to Actually Use AI for Your Business. Today, we're going to continue on from last month's conversation where we talked about using ChatGPT, and we're going to kick it up a notch and talk about Microsoft 365 Copilot. And by the end of today, you will be able to make your own Copilot agent if you would like to. So we promise the best 15 minutes of cybersecurity, and we are going to give you just that. But real quick before we get started, just a reminder that you can use the Q&A function like Megan has to get things started, or you can use the hand raise function at the bottom as we go. And with that, we will dive right into it. If I can get the slide to go. There we go. So the first thing we're going to start off with is kind of Copilot as the people on this call probably know it. So right now, if you go into any Microsoft application or tool, 365, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, you're going to see in the top right corner, like with this graphic, a little Copilot button. And what that's going to do is it's going to open up all kinds of fun, smaller kind of Copilot functions that are available. So you can see, like, for example, with Excel here, you can use it to create formulas, have it explain tables, do all kinds of fun little formatting things. But that is a largely, it's going to answer questions that you put into it. It's not going to be able to generate a lot of data on its own, and it's not going to be able to help you do any part of that creation, if
Yeah,
you
it's
will.
like Clippy, but more advanced,
Yeah, that's a
if anybody
that's
remembers
that's a
Clippy.
very good way to put it. A little bit that's a little bit before Zoom's time, but we are getting back there with some of the call outs on here. But that is available right now on most of the Microsoft licenses that you're going to see. A lot of people on this call probably already have access to that. But what we're going to be talking about today, Dan, and what we're going to be getting into is a little bit more advanced than that. So we're going to be talking about not necessarily this kind of entry level Copilot, but a little bit more advanced with Microsoft 365's Copilot license. Let's jump into just a few of the differences.
Yeah, so let's talk about this for a minute. So like the Clippy version of the Copilot that's integrated into the product, that's still a large language model, and I'm sure you've heard about that, but that means it's kind of chat driven in terms of how you interact with it, and you can get it to do all kinds of useful things. 365's version of Copilot is also kind of confusingly a large application and kind of a suite of services for your business called Copilot that you can bolt on to your office environment at a company or corporate level. And you can make that available to employees as its own separate application. And the way that it works is it kind of, if you've used ChatGPT in the past, you would get this kind of large language model interface, and we'll be looking at it in a minute, but you give it access to some of your internal data. And so you are using as a business your own version of Copilot, or in this case, think of it like a ChatGPT instance if you're not familiar with Copilot. So it's like you're grabbing a copy of ChatGPT, you stick it into your business, and it's contained within your company. It won't go looking for data outside of your business, and it won't share it outside of your business if it's properly set up. And so that internal security piece of it kind of contains that AI, and it starts learning things about your business. So you have to give it access to your data. Giving it access to data is called training your large language model. Office 365 Copilot, in this case, you are training Copilot to know things about your company. And this can be through files or telling it things about your business by saying, we're this kind of a business. Maybe you don't have that clearly explained on the website. You can chat with it and tell it this, and it'll start to learn those things about your company, start using those things as you ask it for information, questions, or to pull data in. So it's a lot similar to what you like about ChatGPT, where it is what's called multimodal. So it's a large language AI. So it's a chatbot that has a lot of functionality built into it. It doesn't do just one thing. You can say, can you create the company logo, but it's got to be a transparent background, and I want to put it into a PowerPoint. The PowerPoint's going to have 10 slides, and it'll be able to do all of those things because it can reach out to your company information, use copies of applications. It has a lot of hooks into the different things that it would need to fulfill a pretty complex request. So those are the differences. You've got one that's built into an application, where it'll work within that application with you. Clippy 2.0, or maybe it's 10.0. It's still very powerful, but limited to that application. But then there's the big one that the whole company of whatever business you work for can use that bolts on top.
Yeah, and I think just an important note of clarification on there, you're not necessarily, when you roll with Microsoft 365 Copilot, you get to choose what data it uses to train
That is
on,
correct.
right? You don't have to just give access to internal data and you just say, well, you sacrifice some data for the functionality. You get to pick and choose down to the file level if you'd like, or down to the web page it can visit when it comes in accessing that internal data. So it's a little bit more secure than maybe we're even making it sound. But yeah, very much more secure than putting the phone into ChatGPT would be. So from there, let's kind of pivot into an example. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to how to use an AI agent through Microsoft 365 Copilot. And we're actually going to pull up an example of one that we've created and that we use here at Silicon Plains.
Yeah, and
So,
if I could pause you
oh
just
yeah,
there.
please
So
do.
the word agent, you're going to hear a ton related to artificial intelligence. And the idea of an agent is once you have a license to use and it's been secured and you have the right things in place for your business to say, maybe everyone or select people have access to this Copilot instance, and we're going to start using AI as a company internally. Um, Inside Copilot, you can think of it like employees. An agent is a person, so to speak. And this person or agent can be trained on particular tasks and become over time really good at reproducing content or helping you with a particular task. And that particular agent it'll stay committed to that particular task and get better and better. So, and that's what we're going to be talking about here. And that's kind of the background behind the idea of an agent.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about kind of the first steps of fully automating simple, repeatable tasks, right? And then kind of going beyond that into having an application that can kind of think for itself based on what you've taught it. So, what we've got pulled up here in our example is what we call our new request for proposal response agent. So, we use this when we're looking at larger government or public bids to kind of quickly summarize and prepare responses to larger contracts that typically would take us 8 to 10 hours or more to do by hand. And so what you can see here, what I've got pulled up is actually the page that it takes you to when you go to create it, called the configure page.
And
And you
this
can
isn't off the
see,
web, right? You got the license and then installed the Copilot Studio app on your desktop
yep, that is correct.
from your IT group.
From my IT. Yep, absolutely. So this is entirely internal Silicon Plains. All the data is internal Silicon Plains, and that's also, what it's used for. So it is as close to a one-to-one business example as we can show here. But you can see it can be incredibly simple. So we just call it the new response agent. Our description, we use it to respond to proposals. What are the instructions? Respond to the proposals we submit, right? So it doesn't need to be super complicated to be able to shave down really complex tasks. Now, a thing that's really cool, and what we talked about earlier, Dan, you referred to it as training your AI, is what Copilot calls knowledge. So what this section is this is where Dan had mentioned, giving access to internal data. You can put absolutely anything internal that you want in there and know it's going to be stored securely within inside your organization. And so for us, for example, what we did is we put in 3 requests, right? 3 official proposal documents that we were invited to, and then our 3 responses. And we essentially use that to train this agent to be able to look at responses we've never seen before and be able to quickly assemble every possible response we could have with it's almost 100% accurate in minutes. And that absolutely shaves down a significant amount of time on a project like this.
I think you said
But
before you were putting what, 6, 7 hours into a RFP response?
it would not be uncommon by the time, because the thing you have to remember with this is not only do you put it together, you've got to read it, changes get made, you go and you do these site visits, you ask questions of the people who gave you the proposal. It's a very involved process that sometimes 10 to 12 hours we've got shaved down to 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and it can produce incredibly good responses. One thing I wanted to just touch on here before we jump into the kind of responses it can give you is what's called the describe section. So this is actually where you can, if you need to, in more words, make live changes to the agent just by saying, I don't know if this is a professional enough tone, and it'll train itself to respond more, more professional. You can put in things here that are, we use the examples of files or Teams chats or website URLs. You can give it very simple commands and have it train itself really, really quickly. And I just want to show as an example, this is a proposal that we had looked at submitting for the city of Inglewood, and it will load any second and it'll be really cool. There we go. So you can see once you've got the agent trained, like we do here, all we had to do was submit the PDF that we got the proposal in and say, can you craft a response? And it immediately put together a really good 12-page response, which is kind of our standard length for these. It breaks it down by section on what the proposal was supposed to be from the city of Inglewood. And it gave us this really nice 12-page response that we were able to continue to tweak and continue to edit. And it will go all the way down to, you can see, pulling information off of our documents and off of our website that we didn't even give it because it's part of that internal knowledge base. So it was
Yeah,
able
it's
to do those kind of
one
things
thing.
incredibly
One thing
quickly.
that on a page you're on, if you could scroll up just a minute, one of the things we're going to be going through and as part of this series, if you could look at one of your prompts where you were adjusting, I think there was a pretty good one down below where you said, yeah, this is fine, but there you go, right there. So this is prompting in AI, and prompting is one of those terms like agent that you're going to hear a ton of because most people interact with an AI large language model using chat. And so you're going to be using English commands back and forth between you and this agent that's doing work for you. And this is a good example of it producing something, saying, do you like it? And Damien says, yeah, but let's make some adjustments. And that's prompt engineering.
Yeah, and what
It can
makes it
get
so
very complicated.
Yeah, and what makes it so unique and better than ChatGPT, in my opinion, is let's say you have something like social media calendar scheduling. You can put it in 2 months of your calendar and it'll produce exactly what your organization needs and knows what it looks like, so it knows what it needs to be, what content it needs to contain. If you do that through ChatGPT, you're going to get the same generic calendar that it has taken as an amalgamation of the most common social media calendar it could find on the internet, right? So it's much more specialized, much more specific to what you're looking to do internally.
Yeah, it's super important to remember that ChatGPT doesn't have access to any of your corporate resources, but Copilot for your company will. So you can ask it, take a look at my email and et cetera, whatever it is that you needed to do, you can create an agent for that.
All right, excellent. So now that we've kind of shown a little bit of example, let's talk about what else can these Microsoft 365 Copilot agents do?
Yeah, the vast majority of businesses are testing this right now in their organization, and they do it at an organizational level. And one of the things that's important to touch on, this is a project inside your business that needs to be supported and talked about with not only the executive leadership of the organization, but all employees who might be touched by or need to use this particular project or product. Um, Pilot projects are really important so that people can start to get used to what it looks like. I think a license for this is relatively cheap. And so you can deploy licenses, you get access to the application, and you can start using it to figure out what would we like to tackle first? What's a thing that we'd like to speed up that we don't like doing today that sounds relatively mundane and, like Damien said earlier, repeatable? So research topics is something that you can do inside your company. It can go in, dig into financials, dig into operational data, dig into your line of business software if you give it access, and can come back with research information that you otherwise wouldn't be able to pull. So if there's reports that you're always frustrated that your line of business software doesn't give you, ChatGPT doesn't need integrated access to it. It can go and use the mouse for you and go grab the data you want, put it into a nice report format. Writing and copy, you've seen some of that already. Damien showed you a little bit about how that works. You can produce documents with it easily and quickly. But then one of the more powerful things that's really developing now as an industry when it comes to AI in a company is custom tool usage. So kind of that using the mouse to go get data, giving large language model AI tool sets is, I mean, you're going to start to see marketplaces open up where you can go download bazillions of ways to give more power and more flexibility and less technical requirements to a large language model like Copilot.
Yeah,
So
you're seeing
lots of
that.
power in this through that interface that you saw Damien using.
Yeah, and what you're seeing and what's really cool is that expand really fast, right? Those AI agents used to be just for Microsoft Office tools. Now you're seeing most famously Monday.com, the CRM tool, has complete Copilot integration. So you can
Yep.
have an agent running whatever information, reports, messaging, whatever you need done inside your CRM automatically behind the scenes. And it's really quite powerful. But let's jump in. We've kind of wrapped up with the first 15 minutes. We're going to jump into a couple of questions that we had. Everybody who's in attendance here, if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A or use the raise hand function at the bottom. But kind of first question I've got for you, Dan, we touched on a little bit earlier, the cost of it and kind of how that works. And so for the license that we use specifically in our example here, that's $30 per user per month. But
Right.
to get into a little bit more detail on that, is it as simple as just buying the license and kind of being done, or what are the other steps with that?
It can be, but that's probably a bad idea. It'd be a little confusing to the people involved. And again, the whole acceptance concept is important with this because it's like going from manual filing to using a file share on a computer back in the day. People need to be on board, or the benefits of using this aren't going to be realized. So I would suggest strongly, and this sounds a little bit of snake eating its own tail, but I'd suggest grabbing like a chat GPT and asking it, what's the best way to get started inside my business using AI? And start working on what your pilot project might look like inside your company. Who would need to be involved? What would you talk about? How would you measure whether or not this was working? Because it can be as much work to try and become efficient, especially if you're using this the wrong way, or you're not using it on a scale that you should be, or you're not really attacking areas where the business wastes time. It can be a complete waste of time. So start first with what's our policy for using AI? Which ones will we allow employees to use? Like right now, I guarantee you just about every business out there has employees using ChatGPT outside the confines of a policy for the business that should be stuck in the HR manual right now. And that should say what you can and can't do with AI as an employee of that business. And by using ChatGPT, they're presenting a security risk. They're probably because ChatGPT will happily ask you to upload the financials from last year and will also happily share that with everyone on the planet. And so without those kind of controls in place, you don't really have a good place to start. Once those are in place, you got a policy, you've got some buy-in, you got a good pilot project defined, go get a license. It's super simple. It's just like saying, I need Word, and it'll pop onto your desktop for $30 for whoever it is that wants to use it, $30 per person per month, and away you go.
Are you implying that people having their personal Gmails hooked up to work computers is a bit of a problem that is pretty common with ChatGPT? That's unheard of to me. I can't picture that.
Yeah, it is
Uh,
definitely one of the problems with AI is it popped up on everybody's devices everywhere all of a sudden. And there really were no instructions about or warnings about what it can and can't do with personal or private information.
yeah, it was a pretty famous example of Toyota accidentally uploading all of their Q3 financials from last year into ChatGPT, and that got blasted everywhere. But that's kind of it for the questions we had come with. I'm not seeing any in the chat, Dan. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap this up?
Let's just talk about what we're doing next webinar.
Absolutely. So on Thursday, September 25th, we're going to be going over a couple of things. So one of the things we're going to send out in the email recap is going to be some information on Google Gemini certifications so people can kind of inform themselves a little bit more in depth as they see fit. So we're going to go over a little bit of detail on those certifications, kind of how people can start the internal training of their organization. And we're going to touch on AI inbound phone call handling agents. So how businesses can use essentially an AI phone answering to kind of branch out a little bit beyond the typical and pun intended phone trees that we've seen so many people use. So we're going to kind
Everybody
of touch
hates
on
phone
a
trees.
yeah, right. So we're going to kind of touch on a couple of things. That's going to be Thursday, September 25th, same time, same place. And like I mentioned, we're going to send out some resources on kind of some, 5 things to know when you get started with Copilot and Gemini certification information in the follow-up email that'll come out with the recording. So with
Awesome.
that, Dan, I believe that's it.